My fiance, best man, groomsman, and I have known each other since we were kids. We collectively met between 6th and 7th grade and have been running around in the same friend group ever since. The group has grown and shrunk over the years, but a small core of us have remained extremely close. Recently, my fiance's best man, Jay, has been making jokes when we're hanging out about the two of us dating that have now escalated. Admittedly, when I met Jay in 6th grade, I had the hugest crush on him, and everyone knew. I was much taller than average for a girl at that age, and he was one of 2 guys in the entire school as tall as me. That, though, is where the story ends. I had one hell of an awkward phase in middle school, and he was very clear from the start that he was not into it. Post-awkward phase, as friends and adults, it was something we constantly joked about, but never seriously. Since everything between us had always been platonic, this joke of me being rejected by him has now recently turned into how he dated me first whenever fiance and I are around. Despite the inaccuracy and an increase of it being brought up, everything has remained pretty lighthearted in context, and while annoying, is something I have been able to brush off or quickly rebuttal. This escalated this weekend when 2 of fiance's groomsmen were over hanging out with fiance and I. The wedding was brought up, and after a concerning look between the two, they mentioned something had happened with Jay they thought we should know about. Apparently, Jay had been telling them stories he was considering for his best man speech, with the main one centering around how I had been shared around and had made my way through the entire friend group. While they kept what was explicitly said fairly vague out of respect for me, they were clear it crossed the line and insinuated I had slept with the entirety of the group attending the wedding. They were very clear with Jay that he could not say anything like this in his speech toast. Jay responded with an "I know," stating that I had already made it clear my maid of honor would be proofreading all speeches prior to the wedding, so he wouldn't be able to get away with it anyway, but ended the conversation by saying something along the lines of, "But what if I could?" leaving the possibility open. Of all the groomsmen in the party, these 2 were the only ones in this core friend group, and the only ones I had any sort of history with that could potentially be notable. It was all prior to high school and very innocent. One I went on my first movie date with, where our parents had to drop each of us off because we couldn't drive and picked us up afterward. The other was the classic first 6-month relationship in middle school where it took 6 weeks to muster up enough courage to hug each other between classes in the hallway. Sure, we made out and very middle school level things happened, but this is something we've all laughed about now for over a decade. I wasn't the only girl in this larger friend group, and throughout the years, this was something that happened pretty frequently. Because we grew up in a smaller area, overlap happened like this regularly in every group, and even more so as we went through high school. My fiance is the only one I have seriously dated or had any sort of intimate relationship with in this friend group. We had an on-again, off-again relationship throughout high school that ended for a bit once I moved out of state for college, but we remained close friends and eventually reconnected when I moved back in 2019. We started dating in 2021 and got engaged in 2023. He's the only one in all of this I have ever slept with, who has seen me naked, and so on, making this situation even more odd and off-putting. Jay and I have been close friends since high school. When fiance was in a toxic relationship that isolated him from Jay after I had left for college, Jay would reach out to me for advice on school, girls, relationships, and more. He had always been our #1 supporter, advocating for fiance and I to reconcile our relationship throughout college and into adulthood. He even took a bit of credit and would throw around an "I told you so" here and there when we eventually did reconnect. I'm not sure how to handle this. I could write an additional post about how frustrated, confused, wronged, and uncomfortable I feel, all of which I plan to discuss in more detail with fiance after sitting on the issue for a bit longer. We've all talked about it. Recognizing the way Jay is framing things is wrong, but fiance and the groomsmen are able to brush it off in a way I feel like I can't. I don't know how to move forward from this, or what to do next. Now for a few important comments. A commenter suggested, "You and fiance need to talk about if this happens. Perhaps you can have only family make speeches, or skip them altogether. If y'all do let him make a speech, talk to your DJ. Show the DJ a pic and tell the DJ any intimacy lover shaming or off-color comments about the bride means the DJ turns off the mic." I replied, "Thank you so much for this. Recognizing there is still the possibility of this happening, regardless of if he says he won't say these things, or if I have someone proofread his speech, is a truth I was trying to avoid. I think I was rationalizing with myself that regardless of the claims were true or not, attacking my integrity in front of my family and loved ones was not something he would do out of respect, but in actuality, that line has already been crossed. In the mix of all the emotions, talking to the DJ wasn't even an option I thought of having, I have definitely added that to the list for when I talk with my fiance in greater depth about this later, but to do regardless. Another commenter said, "Yeah, you need to get your fiance involved. This is some low-class behavior designed to ruin your wedding. It seems like he has some secret hatred towards you for some reason that he would think it's okay to humiliate you on this type of level." Then another commenter guessed, "Secret crush would be my guess." Now, for the 2-day update. First, I wanted to thank those who were clear and honest about how alarming the situation was from their perspective. When posting, I was still processing various feelings about the matter, and still am, which not only limited my ability to really look at the situation from a different perspective, but also left me in a state of paralysis of what to do next, both long and short term. I have spoken in further detail to both my fiancé and one of the other groomsmen involved. I also confided in my maid of honor about the situation for an additional perspective outside of this specific friend group. After these conversations and reading through all comments on the original post, I've come to realize the significance of a few key details. Jay has a deep-rooted superiority complex. He always has, and it is something many in our friend group have become accustomed to. He has always been the type who seemed to believe he was the standout amongst his friends, whether that be through education, athletics, his career, or with women. Jay has also always been a bit egocentric, and a lack of accountability or consequences for his actions has been growing for some time now. Despite it almost always being unintentional, he more often than not is oblivious to the inconveniences and harm he causes others, as long as it is beneficial to his personal ego. This is about jealousy from a few different angles, but not about me specifically. When looking at the full picture, this escalation feels like a continued attempt to knock my fiancé down for reaching that next stage in life. Whether that is because my fiancé has reached it before him or has moved onward without him, I cannot say for sure. Jay has issues with misogyny that have also been escalating in tandem with everything else. His lack of respect for the women he has dated has also seemed to increase. Much of the personal tension him and I have had recently pertain to his perspective of women that have begun to veer into a more disrespectful realm, alluding to an increased belief that due to their gender alone, women are inferior. The good friend he was to me over the years, who was always kind and supportive, who never overstepped boundaries and was always there when needed, can exist in tandem with the above information. They are not mutually exclusive. Life happens and people grow, sometimes in opposite directions. I spoke in depth with one of the groomsmen to have further transparency of the situation and what was explicitly said. He acknowledged that the conversation initially centered around the excitement they had for the wedding, and Jay clearly stating he wanted to give my fiancé and I the best wedding and experience possible. The conversation evolved, and Jay mentioned looking for icebreakers for his speech/toast and began bouncing a variety of distasteful jokes that focused more so on the expense of my fiancé than anything else. Then the idea was proposed about explicitly stating that my being passed around the friend group was how they all remained relatively close since middle school and high school. Jay was immediately shut down by the other groomsmen, told to know his audience, and also recognize he was openly alluding to things that were untrue and that could have an extremely negative impact on me personally. The conversation stopped shortly after this, and the groomsmen, without context of how this issue had been escalating, chalked it up to a one-off situation with Jay acting full of himself in the moment. My fiancé and I are the first of our cohort to get married and have a full-blown wedding with a ceremony and reception. These comments did not start escalating until after our engagement roughly 1 year ago, following Jay's breakup with his long-term girlfriend. Jay has never made comments like this to me or my fiancé privately or when it is just the three of us together. Any scenario where this has been an issue has been in an environment which involved others, and mostly others that are not a part of this cohort from middle school. This solidified the above bullet points as the main factors to why Jay acted in this way, from my perspective. So, what next? As mentioned in my original post, I spoke with my fiancé in detail about the situation and how I was feeling. When all of this had been brought to our attention a few days prior, in an attempt to preserve myself in the moment, I brushed it off more so than I probably should have. I do not blame my fiancé for not having any immediate or strong reaction in the moment, because I had avoided one myself. I think it's important to note that Jay is not a day-to-day character in our lives. While he travels frequently for work that brings him to our area, we live states apart. He has not lived in the same area as me or my fiancé since high school. Much of this evolution with his personality has happened in the last few years as well. I recognize this is not an excuse for the lack of accountability on our part, but felt it added important context that this was not something that was observed and ignored daily, but one that has slowly been recognized over time, since we maybe see him 4 times a year, at most. My fiance was extremely open in conversation, immediately brought up having a conversation with Jay, but admitted to not viewing this as anything more than Jay just being Jay and that he was all talk. At this point, we had only discussed how Jay had continually escalated the situation and how uncomfortable I had now become from this. The lack of accountability my fiance had made for Jay's action definitely hurt, but then I recalled a commenter who had asked if I still considered Jay a friend because he actually was, or because that was how it has always been. To sum up what turned into a lengthier and much more productive conversation with my fiancé, I told him that while I recognized his friendship with Jay was something that had always been a part of his life, I did not personally want to be friends with him anymore after this. I brought to my fiancé's attention that while the scenario was explicitly about me and attacking the integrity and character of a 12-year-old girl, every action or usage of the scenario was used against him to invalidate his accomplishments of getting married or make him come off as less than. I told my fiancé it was up to him on how he handles his conversation with Jay, but regardless, the disrespect Jay had shown me in this was a clear statement of what he thought of our own personal friendship. I firmly believe it is not my place to force how my fiancé handles his own personal relationship with Jay in this. All of this was deeply taken to heart, and you could tell that my fiancé had started coming to his own realizations as the conversation progressed. He recognized that if the roles were reversed, or if it had been any one of my bridesmaids slandering me in any way, he would be firmly advocating for me to reevaluate my friendship with them. My fiancé asked for a few days to stomach the information himself and reflect on what he wants to say to Jay. He asked if it would be acceptable for him to bring up that I no longer wanted to be friends with Jay personally, and I said yes. I was clear that if Jay wanted to talk with me following their conversation as well, it would need to be the three of us and not a personal conversation. I am still evaluating how to approach the speeches/toasts at our wedding. For now, I reserve the right with my fiancé to omit Jay from giving a speech and having my fiancé choose another groomsman to do so in his place, potentially canceling the speeches/toasts altogether, and if Jay is allowed to give a toast, telling the DJ to cut the mic if need be, all of which he agreed with. There is still plenty of time for the situation to develop and for potential future updates, but I wanted to again thank those that emphasized the seriousness of this issue, gave their honest input and advice on how to handle the situation, and provided perspective on what they believe should be done next. When originally posting, I was still in a state of shock, trying to accept the situation as it had unfolded. Your responses constructively pushed me into the reality of what was happening and what I was feeling. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, as an Optimus, "It's only been a handful of days since this all came to light. I wish your fiancé's reaction had been more about coming to your defense than Jay's, but understand that sometimes people need time to truly process all that contributes to a messy situation, especially one with deep roots and close ties. I hope your fiancé spends this time really examining his recent interactions with Jay and the current harm he's caused, and the potential harm he could still cause. I hope he honors you as his partner and does the right thing. I'm still of the mindset that Jay shouldn't be allowed near a mic during your reception. The trust is already broken. Even if he somehow manages to redeem himself, will you honestly be able to sit there and not worry the entire time that he's been biding his time? You shouldn't be focused on giving the DJ the unalive signal because you're stressed. The best man might publicly humiliate you. You should be focused on the heartfelt words of a friend whose words are meant to be lifting you up in celebration and love. When Jay lost your trust, he also lost the privilege. Wishing you and your fiancé best of luck and the fortitude to see this through to a happy end. Now for a few comments. Thank you for conveying this so well. I did my best to add an emphasis to this, but could not do so as well in my own words and fear it got lost in the length of the post. I very much have worries, and knowing my personality will also be worried day of. I expressed this to my fiancé as well, and he completely understood. I recognize there is still plenty of concern to still address with my fiancé. But given how fresh this situation is, I wanted to afford myself a little grace of absorbing my feelings for what has happened before, figuring out exactly what to do. I lost a friend too. Another commenter said, "What you are describing is a bitter misogynist. If you plan to serve alcohol at your wedding, you should not have Jay there at all. All it will take is one drink too many, and he will be bragging to some table of guests about how he had you first, or how we passed her around. He doesn't need a speech to create a complete nightmare for you, and quite possibly a fistfight, because even if your groom knows you wouldn't want that, one of the other men that you are close friends with is very likely to take exception on your behalf. And if none of them do, your MOH might just slap the ever-living shoot out of him. He has made it impossible for you to enjoy your own wedding in his presence. His reward is having his invitation revoked. If your fiancé thinks that's too harsh, you need to be very clear with him that you did not do this. Jay did this to himself by not acting like a decent human being. Then another commenter added, "The fiancé still isn't looking good. I wouldn't be surprised if he came back with more minimizing." Now for the 6-month update. I'm considering canceling our wedding and calling off our engagement over a pizza. Buckle up, because this is a long one. While the drama around my fiancé's best man has simmered, the deeper issues surrounding a lack of support have not. Apologies in advance for this not being centered around my fiancé's best man. Not much has honestly changed. A conversation between them was had, much of which was my fiancé assuring him that things would blow over and accommodating Jay's stresses that it was only a joke. While my fiancé acknowledged what was said was wrong, the conversation wasn't to set boundaries. I eventually had to have my own conversation with Jay that my fiancé stood silently in the room for. I reached my breaking point 2 weeks ago. Following everything with his best man and a few other challenges we'd been facing, I tried putting my best foot forward these past 6 months. I sought out therapy to address the lack of support and anxiety I was feeling, and have made intentional efforts to work on our relationship to ensure we were in a stronger place before committing to each other. In May, after some unexpected and startling health concerns requiring a need for an emergency room visit, my fiancé came clean to me about secretly canceling his health insurance in January without talking to or telling me. When I asked him why, he blamed the cost of the wedding being too expensive and wanting to save the $150 a month, taking no other accountability for his actions, outside of an apology. I have a small amount of experience in accounting and have budgeted the wedding down to the last dollar. This has included the consideration of inflation and other potentials as well. In total, from the smallest decoration to the cost of a marriage certificate, everything comes down to around $22,000, all of which I have strategically budgeted for throughout our 2-year engagement. My parents have graciously given us $14,000 as well to help with the expenses, and I have personally taken on the price of my dress, wedding bands, and a slightly larger portion of the vendors. To put it simply, while it may not be as much as others, we have privilege. Not only was there no need for this cancellation, but I have yet to see any of that additional support for expenses. Regardless, in response, I took it upon myself to take more of the costs on and pursue a part-time job on top of my full-time position that earns roughly $70,000 a year. While it's not by a large margin, I do make the most between us individually and have a larger responsibility in my daily work life with longer hours and a significant level of expected travel as a result. The choice to take on a part-time role was not one of want, but of desire to ease the burden he was feeling. I started a role reviewing blogs, essays, resumes, and other forms of writing in July, and our relationship quickly unraveled. Because I commute, I typically arrive home 3 hours after my fiancé. After arriving, I would immediately have to hop on my laptop and review writings for the next 2 hours or so to stay on top of my quota. I tried my best to make a routine out of it, so we would have intentional time together once I finished each night. This was met with cold shouldering, frustration, and a lack of consideration for my level of exhaustion and strain for months. Anytime I asked him to choose a show to watch or decide on dinner while, he usually does cook because I get home so much later. While I revised, I was met with scoffs and accusations that I no longer cared to tend to our relationship. I tried countless times to address his frustrations and was shut out or cornered in a circular argument about my priorities. 2 weeks ago, I was slated to travel for my full-time position to Atlanta during Hurricane Helene. In a matter of 12 hours, my afternoon flight for the next day was shifted to one, leaving at 5 a.m., to give me ample time to shelter in place prior to the arrival of the storm. I rushed home to finish packing and prepare myself to drive over an hour to the airport and stay at a hotel nearby for additional flexibility in case of issues surrounding my early travel that next morning. After arriving home, I immediately hopped in the shower and asked my fiancé to order dinner so we could have one final meal together. During my shower, he offered to order a hot honey, jalapeno, and pineapple pizza from a new place we'd been wanting to try, which I normally would have been happy to try. However, I don't like jalapeno the way some people don't like cilantro and am avidly against pineapple on pizza, something that's come up multiple times during our relationship. And while I'm good with spice, the idea of taking that on with the travel stress and early start time I had the next day made me hesitant. I calmly asked if there was another option for tonight and if we could try that specific pizza once I got home instead, expressing my concerns over my nerves, which received a frustrated scoff and sarcastic response of, "What then? Just cheese." I explained any other topping combination would work and restated my issues. He walked out of the bathroom without response, and I finished my shower. The pizza was never ordered. No food was ordered. I followed up as soon as I got out of the shower, asking if there was another option he wanted or place he wanted to consider, and received a prompt no. As I finished getting ready, I asked if anything had been ordered again, and no. I finally snapped and begged and demanded him to order the hot honey pizza because I was out of time. He accused me of making him feel like he's forcing me into the decision, but after a bit of back and forth, the pizza was ordered and the mood immediately shifted. Everything was peaceful, warm, and loving at home up until I left. Yet, I cried the entire hour and 15-minute drive to the airport hotel. I cried the entire next day, throughout the storm in Atlanta, and the entire day after. Following a lack of sleep, stress, and intense emotions, I had a complete mental breakdown, realizing I can't live like this. I called my fiance and poured out every frustration, emotion, and feeling, which I admit was probably not presented in the best light, but none of it was well received. In the 2 weeks since, despite many attempts, conversations have gone nowhere, with only ultimatums being offered for me to make. I've proposed countless alternatives that focus on us working on ourselves and together these next few months. But he is only seeking an answer to whether or not we will be getting married next summer, and has made it known this is a decision that must be made by the end of October. At this point, I don't see how I can possibly gain the confidence to commit myself to him by next summer. For the sake of not doubling the length of this post, I will leave it at this for now. All of this is being discussed with my therapist. At this time, he has chosen not to pursue counseling with me, despite my asking and advocating. Many words have been expressed, and I am trying, but I'm starting to second guess and waver on just how far love can get me through all of this. Now for a few comments. Hun, do not marry this man. He is showing you how much he does not respect or listen to you. Calling off the wedding will be cheaper than a divorce. He sounds immature and self-centered. Do not marry a man that won't be a partner. Sounds like he wants to end it by making you break up with him. It's just like the pizza. In the end, you'll have to accommodate his behavior without it ever changing. Am I the idiot for seeking help when my wife insisted she was pregnant despite all evidence? My wife and I have been married for 2 years and together for 15. All this time, we had either not decided to have kids or had problems getting pregnant. After some medical testing, we found out that it was near impossible to get pregnant due to some medical issues with her. We were thinking of adopting when one day she came home and told me she was expecting. Of course, I was super happy. A week later, we had an appointment at the gyno, and she had some blood drawn. The test came back negative, and of course, I was devastated, but she wasn't. She claimed that she was pregnant and that the doctor was wrong. We took some more store-bought ones, and they all came back negative. My wife is in complete denial. Now she claims we are having twins. She is buying them clothes and decorations and is pressuring me to start with the nursery. I am at a loss and don't know what to do. My inaction is making her believe that I want to leave them and that I am going to doom my wife into the life of a single mom. I love her, but I don't know what to do. Edit. I forgot to add. I have tried talking her into therapy, but she accuses me of gaslighting her. Now, for a few important comments. A deleted commenter suggested calling the doctor who did the pregnancy tests and leaving a message with the emergency number. They pointed out that at 19 weeks, there would be ultrasound pictures and gender determination, and she would have had several OBGYN visits. They asked if she was doing practical things like taking prenatal vitamins and reading books, or if it was all delusional talk, wondering how far she's taking this scenario. I responded, I know. Also, she isn't showing at all. She is thin as always. Yes, she says that she can't lift heavy things, says she has pregnancy cravings, she buys clothes for the twins, she is even planning to take paid time off from work for when the babies are here. Another deleted commenter mentioned being frightened and compared it to stories of people taking babies from pregnant women. They advised getting her help ASAP and asked if she was all of a sudden 19 weeks or if this had been going on a while, questioning what spurred her into thinking she was initially pregnant and if I had seen her have her period in this time. I replied, she claimed she was pregnant about a few weeks ago, but as of Friday, she says she entered her 19th week. I really don't know what brought her to think that. SoCal Pizza pointed out that she is going through something very, very serious and advised contacting a therapist immediately. They said her preoccupation with pregnancy and sadness had overcome her and that this was beyond Reddit's pay grade. I responded, I have tried talking her into therapy and she shuts down 100% and accuses me of gaslighting her. Panda Jinx suggested it could be a pseudo-pregnancy, a psychological phenomenon, and advised getting help from an OBGYN and a psychiatrist. They mentioned that an ultrasound could be curative and that she would likely mourn the loss as if it were real. Now for the 7-day update. I called up our primary doctor and told him about the problem. He seemed very concerned and wanted us to come see him the next morning. He said it was important to be gentle but not feed into her delusions. I sat her down and we talked. All she wanted to talk about was when I would get the nursery started and that we were on a time crunch, how she found a perfect color for the room, and how she wants me to be more involved in her pregnancy. I tried to be very calm, but was very perturbed by seeing her that way. I asked her to go to the doctor with me tomorrow. She said yes, that she wanted to check on the babies either way. I took some advice and words you gave me about being calm and asking a bit why she thinks she is pregnant without calling her delusional. So I did. She kept changing subjects or saying that a mother just feels it. You wouldn't know how it is. Then I said that I loved her very much, that I would never think of leaving her, but we needed to go to the doctor to confirm her gut feeling. She got very agitated and was crying, telling me that if I wanted to leave her, I should simply leave, but shouldn't call her a liar. Somehow, I managed to calm her down enough for her to go to sleep. After she did, I went on her computer. I never snoop on her, but I remembered a commenter pointing out forums about cryptic pregnancy, so I went for the lookout. Oh boy. She was in 2 Facebook groups. One was a normal mommy Facebook group, and the other was a group about women who believed they were pregnant. In the normal group, she would post updates about her symptoms and pictures of her belly and her story about how she was almost not able to have children, but thanks to the grace of God that kissed her tummy, the gift of life was given to her, and how she was compensated for all these years of suffering with twins. In the other group, the women were quite literally, and excuse me here, insane. They were feeding into each other's delusions. A woman said that she was almost 2 years pregnant and how sometimes it just takes longer. My wife would post there complaining about doctors that do not take her seriously and about me. So many women were making her fear that I would leave, saying things like, men cannot stick to a woman. Many recounted their stories about how their marriages broke down because their spouses could not handle the pregnancy. I was really scared. I researched phantom pregnancies and read somewhere that it could also be a sign of schizophrenia. I couldn't sleep. I was and am still very afraid of losing her. She woke up, and I tried to act like nothing was wrong. We were going to the doctor, and it was as if nothing had happened yesterday. She was convinced that we were going to a pregnancy checkup. Things got really bad when we began talking to the doctor. He was really tactful when talking to my wife. He tried to explain that it was medically impossible for her to be pregnant. We tried to show her tests and the ultrasound we did the day before, but nothing. She got more agitated, began to cry, and screamed at me for making her look like a crazy person. She began bouncing back and forth and holding her head with both hands. We could not calm her. She went into a full-on panic attack. She could not breathe. The doctor laid her down and tried giving her some medicine to relax, but it did not help, as he didn't have the necessary tools to treat a panic attack that was that bad. She had to go to the hospital, where they took care of her and did an EKG to exclude that she was suffering a heart attack. At that point, I really had no other option than to inquire about involuntary commitment. I could not do it myself. I needed my doctor's statement that she was a danger to herself and others, and he had to initiate the process of an involuntary examination of 72 hours. After that, we will have to submit a written statement to the court to determine whether or not she can stay there against her will. So far, I have submitted all her posts in both Facebook groups as well as the tests we did with timestamps when possible. My wife is 2 days into the 3-day examination, and I have no contact with her. When I last saw her, she was furious with me. She said I was taking away her freedom, which I am. I feel horrible, dirty, and useless. She is so mad at me. I feel like I am abandoning her and don't know how she will ever forgive me. I love her with all my heart. I am afraid of what will happen if the courts decide that I can't commit her, how our life will be affected. I feel like I failed to protect her. At this point, I am just rambling. Sorry for the long post. I guess I just need to vent because I have no one else to really turn to that just wants to listen. I feel judged by everyone and pitied. I just hate it. Sorry for spelling mistakes. Edit. I will not leave my wife, you unempathetic dickheads. When I gave my vows, I meant through illness and bad times. I am not only on the ride for the good times. If you truly love someone, you will do whatever it takes to see them healthy again. Would you leave your spouse if they went through a severe physical illness? I am here to stay. I will not divorce her. She is not a fucking psycho. She is sick. I hope none of your loved ones ever have to go through this because their support net will consist of cowardly dickheads. Sorry for the rant. But if you want to say something like, divorce that nut, don't even bother. I understand people that make the choice to leave if the situation begins to mess with their mental health, and I respect that. But I won't do that. Edit 2. My wife didn't have a heart attack. She was examined because panic attacks register with similar symptoms as heart attacks. I don't exactly know what our doctor gave her as I was so distraught, but it was not a sedative. I think it was something along the lines of Valium or Baldrian. Over-the-counter stuff, mostly. She has family. She is estranged from most of them. Her sister is now at our place to help. Also, refrain from such stupid comments like, I'll bet she will leave, bro. She is crazy. How did you marry her? Because they are not helpful at all. Especially the bets that are going on that my wife will leave me once she gets better. Just seems like you want me to divorce. Get a life. Now for a few comments. A commenter said, I used to work in the involuntary commitment system. Everyone is upset with their loved ones when they get committed. Everyone. And it's a normal thing for family members and partners to feel a ton of guilt. But your wife needs help. You took the steps to get her that help, even though it was scary. You will not regret this. Another commenter shared, I had to involuntarily commit my husband. He has PTSD, and I got a phone call at work 40 minutes away in a different county that he loved me and that I shouldn't feel bad. I had to call 911, bawling my eyes out, knowing he was having a bad week, and then call the emergency line for the county he was in. They connect you to the nearest one. When the police broke the door down, he was in the bathroom. He hid the razor before he came out. He was so mad at me. He hated me. He wanted a divorce. He never wanted to see me again. And to be honest, I was pretty angry too. Not because of his mental illness, but because I felt so helpless. I want to say after a week of the adjusted meds, he called apologizing. He told me how thankful he was that I had called. He was thankful that I didn't budge on him being committed. He was thankful that he had someone who knew him well enough to know that he wasn't manipulating me. He had been pushing me away, which is a sign of being suicidal, and we had been fighting a lot because of it. You did the right thing. You definitely have done the right thing for her well-being, no matter how angry she is now. She'll see it one day. Another commenter added, Dude, what you did is so incredibly hard, but it was the right decision. You tried everything, doctors, kindness, everything. This is not a normal, don't snoop in your partner's stuff circumstance. Your wife is having an actual, legitimate health crisis. She cannot act in her own best interest right now. But God damn it, you can and you did. It may take a long time for both of you to see it completely, but she needed immediate and intensive psychiatric treatment. And finally, someone else said, Yup, we are so proud of you for doing something so hard for your wife. She may resent you now, but when she gets better, she'll understand. She cannot comprehend that what you are doing is saving her. We are all rooting for you and your wife's recovery. Hang in there. Now for the 8-month update. Hi guys, it's me again. We have a lot of time on our hands, so I thought why not update the community that helped me, even if it was just to let me know that I could vent. I don't even know how much time has passed, but I am very happy to say that things are working out. I have my wife's permission to share this with you all, and she is even telling me to greet you. After being in the 72-hour stay, it was determined that she had to stay there. My wife was pissed for the first few weeks. It was a devastating time, but time and therapy heal all wounds. Slowly, I was allowed to come visit, and every day I went, I saw a bit more of the person I loved. There were setbacks along the way, and I had to watch a lot of what I said and did. For example, the first few weeks, she wouldn't tolerate touch or something like that. Our trust had to be regained slowly from both parts. We put so much work in, and even now that she is back home and has been for a while, we sometimes have bad days where it is difficult for my wife to get out of bed or where I am suspicious of her getting back into that state. But at the end of the day, I am happy. We go to counseling together, and we are in individual therapy as well, especially because due to the stress, I developed a form of anxiety. But every day, it's a bit better. I have discovered new sides of my wife, like the new hobby that she has of making resin jewelry and decorations. Even our quarantine time has been quite peaceful. We still have remote therapy and everything. Things are not normal yet, and adoption is not back on the table as of now. We have given ourselves at least a year of therapy before we think about parenting and raising a child. One thing is for certain, I am still in love with my wife, and I still love her so much. Our relationship might not be better than ever, but it sure as hell is stronger than ever. Also, she has done a lot of self-reflection, and of course has thanked me for how I handled things. She is lovely. We are happy. Now for a few comments. One commenter asked, Did you ever get a definitive cause from the doctors? This seems so surreal. I've never heard of it before. I replied, Not a definitive cause, but the trigger at least. Another commenter said, This is wonderful news. I remember your story. It was terrifying. Full marks for supporting her. Someone else added, Good on you for helping your wife get the help she needs. That was a terrible experience, but you really stepped up. Even if things aren't perfect, you've both come a long way. I'm so happy for you. Then another commenter shared their thoughts. Good to hear things are looking up, and you won't be considering adopting in the near future. Matter of fact, might be a good time to use some of those therapy sessions to start preparing yourselves for the likely possibility that you won't ever be able to adopt. Agencies have to say that an applicant's mental history isn't an automatic deal unalived, but in reality, it often is. They simply can't risk adopting out children to people suffering from such extreme mental illness that involuntary stays were required. It's all but a guarantee that they'd never allow children to be placed under your wife's care. Your mental health history is part of the background check, and red flags like involuntary holds will often exclude you from adopting. They'll still have you go through the whole process and pretend like you have a chance, but reality is you probably won't be eligible. They just can't risk putting children in the care of people with a history of mental illnesses. Am I the idiot for exposing my cousin's boyfriend and my aunt's affair at her birthday party? I, female 19, am diagnosed with ASPD, and I need opinions of people who can feel empathy to know if I was wrong. Yesterday night, it was my cousin Bianca, female 21, birthday. We were all invited to her house. She still lives with her parents, and we have a big family. My family arrived first, and a while later my aunt, who is just divorced, Cami, female 46, arrived, and when she hugged Bianca's boyfriend, Vincent, male 21, I thought they seemed pretty close. After we sang happy birthday and cut the cake, Cami asked me to take pictures with her unlocked phone, as I don't like to be in photos. As I was taking them, I saw a notification from someone called Vincent and accidentally, more or less, opened it. It said, "I can't wait till the party is over." It was him. I knew his profile picture. Not even 10 minutes later, Cami asked Vincent to help her bring her gift to Bianca from the car. It was an electric guitar. Curious, I followed them into the backyard and, under the little light of the car, saw them kissing. As I had my phone in hand, I quickly snapped a picture and went into the house before they could see me. They came back 15 minutes later. As much as I don't care about Bianca, I thought she deserved to know the truth. So when it was my turn to give her my gift, I pulled her aside and showed her the picture. She burst into tears and started screaming, confronting both Cami and Vincent. "How could you do this to me?" There were lots of tears and shouting. Vincent said it was only one kiss, only this time. But then I asked to see his phone. He denied. Cami also denied, calling me a psychopathic, heartless word. The party ended soon after, and Vincent left with Cami. Now my family is divided in 3 fronts. 1. My grandma, grandpa, uncle, and mother think it was not my place to tell. 2. Bianca's father, my other aunt, Bianca's mother, Bianca's brother, and Bianca, who think I should have waited till the end of the party to tell and not ruined her 21st birthday. And 3. My sister, my father, and my other cousin, who think I did the right thing. Feels like everyone is mad at me and not the cheaters. So, am I the jerk? Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "NTA, I feel like the birthday would have been ruined either way. It's sad that they couldn't even wait for your cousin to have a good birthday to act on their affair." OP replied, "Right, I was flabbergasted." Another commenter mentioned, "It's anyone's place to tell on a cheater, not the idiot." OP responded, "Thank you, I feel validated." Someone else pointed out, "You're not the idiot for exposing the affair, but you could have chosen a better time and place to do it." OP answered, "Thank you. I find it hard to take other people's feelings into account since I don't have many of my own. I will apologize to Bianca." Another commenter added, "Yeah, finding out you're being cheated on in public can also be really embarrassing. You feel shame, anger, disgust, and vulnerable. It's usually one of the lowest points of someone's life, so you really don't want an audience for it. It makes it a spectacle. If you're ever in a situation like that again, as hard as it is to wait, make sure the victim of cheating has some privacy." OP replied, "I will, thank you." A different commenter said, "You did the right thing by telling Bianca. In the future, could you talk to someone close to you who tends to do the right thing often and ask for their advice how to proceed? If you're close to anyone in the second group of people who thought right thing, wrong time, they could be a good sounding board in the future." Another commenter remarked, "NTA, but you had really wrong timing." OP responded, "Thank you. I find it hard to take other people's feelings into account since I don't have many of my own. I will apologize to Bianca." Now for the one-day update. Hi. So as you can see from my profile, I am not an active user, so I hope this post finds those who answered my previous post. My grandparents called for an urgent family meeting this afternoon. Me, my sister, father, and mother went as soon as we could. When we arrived, Bianca was already there. As some of you suggested, I called her into the other room and apologized for airing the dirty laundry in front of everyone. She cried a little, and also apologized for being mad at me, thanking me, because if I hadn't taken the picture, she wouldn't have believed me, as she's been with Vincent for 5 years. She hugged me, which was a bit awkward since we haven't hugged in many years. To give you a rundown, Vincent left with Cami last night and broke up with Bianca over text. When Cami showed at the family meeting, she was bombarded with questions. Like, when did it start? How did it start? She answered calmly, although it seemed like she cried a lot during the night. The affair started when Vincent turned 18, so 3 years ago, at a previous birthday of Bianca. My mother, who had been on her side before, was disgusted. My grandparents admitted knowing and encouraging the affair, but apologized. Bianca stormed off and said that she would cut everyone who kept in touch with Kami off. I did not follow her, as we are not close. I forgot to mention in my previous post, but Kami is not just my aunt, she's my godmother, which is a very important title where I live, like a second mother. As she was leaving, the family had decided to cast her out. She asked if she could talk to me. Curious, I went. She told me she was sorry, and I said I was not the one she should apologize to. I said she was preying on Vincent, but she vehemently denied, saying she never had eyes for him before he was 18. Yeah, right, I said. She started crying, saying it was a mistake, and she would do anything to have her family back. I said, I was not the one wronged, but I will not forgive you and will cut you off, as your actions tell me a lot about your morale. Do not contact me ever again. She cried, begged, and pleaded, saying I was like a daughter to her. So I said, I am a psychopathic, heartless board, after all, and left. She tried calling and messaging, but I blocked her everywhere, as did the rest of my family. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, NTA, this woman groomed a kid and then started sleeping with him supposedly at 18. It's sick as suck gets. Add to that she's doing her niece's boyfriend. It's even more sick. Grandparents are disgusting too. This isn't an empathy question. This is basic morality. Another commenter observed, it's kind of telling that even the diagnosed psychopath has a better understanding of right and wrong than the cheating groomer. Someone else added, right? It's wild how the so-called psychopath is showing more loyalty and ethics than the entire family who condoned this gross betrayal. Another commenter asked, why TF would your grandparents encourage that? I'd honestly cut them off too. They encouraged her grooming a child and sleeping with him as soon as he was 18. Not just any child, but your cousin's BF. Gross, OP replied. I have no idea why they encouraged it, as at the time nobody asked. My guess is, Kami has always been the golden child of theirs, as long as I've lived. She can do no wrong in their eyes. Once she totaled my mother's car, and they convinced my mother to not make her pay. Like at all. Me, my sister, and Bianca will be cutting them off. I am yet to know about the rest of the family.